Well, cheer, y'all. Welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, I hope you've rested and recovered from what was a very profitable Breeders' Cup for yours truly. With the big exactas, we hit them both, and it was a wild weekend. There were a lot of crazy finishes. The turf race with Ethical Diamond was one for the ages. That really was quite something, and it was nice to see Forever Young finally get his due on the international stage by winning the classic. And if you recall from my posts, I mean, I really thought his best race was behind him, but I was clearly wrong. But I was very happy that he did win, and a good one for Japan. It's good for the sport to grow it. So, uh, all in all, I had a very enjoyable Breeders' Cup, and I hope you did as well. But let's go back to business here, and we'll talk about Churchill Downs. The fall meet at Churchill Downs, I love. It's one of my favorite meets of the year. It's got a lot of very interesting facets to it, like every meet does. And one of the things that you have to remember about the fall meet at Churchill Downs is the heavy lifting is over. The big races have been run. So these bigger trainers, a lot of times, the horses they run at the fall meet are either for they're trying to get rid of, or they're trying to figure out a way to get them to improve. It's like a coaching clinic or a practice races, if you will. So a lot of times you can find some great value by overlooking what normally would be uh, short priced horses for these big name trainers where it might normally be a spot where he'd be very good, but he's got a horse who maybe isn't as good as we thought. So just a little something to keep in mind when you think about these races. And the first one we've got kind of case in point. This is the pick five we're going to talk about comprises races 7 through 11, and we've got a couple of stakes races to finish it. But the first one we're going to talk about is a claimer for 80,000 non-winners at 2 lifetime, run at 7 furlongs for 3-year-olds and up, and it's the 7th race. Uh, 80,000 is obviously a pretty big claiming price, but you have to remember the angles stay the same. The things that you look for in claiming races, trainer intent, how is the horse done, they moving up, moving down in class, all these things. And looking at this race, it's no different. Now, my good friend Tim Hughes over at Trust the Profits, who I spent Breeders' Cup weekend with, and we both did pretty darn well. Uh, he's got a great angle for non-winners at 2 lifetime, and that is you want to throw out horses who want a maiden claimer, but you want to consider horses who won a maiden special weight as their lone win. And it's a pretty potent angle. And in this case, the horses we want to talk about, oddly enough, all 3 of them that we're going to use, won a maiden special weight and not a maiden claimer. But they all have, they're all interesting in one aspect or another. But it maybe is more interesting about the horses that well, let me just get through them. Okay, we'll start with talking about Terrapin Station for Dale Romans. This is a horse who had a couple of pretty promising efforts and then went to the bench, came out in the last start in September and laid an egg. But, interesting note, and I've talked about this before, but if you look at the running lines, what you see is a horse who was never in the race, really, but early on was 3 lengths back and then progressively faded as the race finished. Now, those of you who have followed my posts before know that a lot of times when you see a running line like that, particularly if you see a 1, like right out of the gate, they're right up amongst the leaders and then they drop way back. That's a sign that a horse is really keen to run and he's rock fit. He's just too keyed up to factor. The next race is when you want to get him. Now, it's not a really strong angle here, but it is a pretty good one for a good trainer in Dale Romans. And Terrapin Station, Corey Lannery's a jockey that Dale uses a lot. And this one showed some ability. It is a little troubling. He's in a claiming race. but it is for 80,000, so it's not like they're giving them away. And I think it's very possible that Terrapin Station will run back to something similar to those first couple of races, albeit against older horses. So Terrapin Station, I think 4-1 is a pretty square price. I don't know that you want to take anything really short in this race, but Terrapin Station is one that I would use. Now, Mitty's Gritty is, in all honesty, a horse I normally would throw out, and I'll tell you why. Yes, it's Brad Cox. Yes, it's Irad Ortiz, but look at those running lines. The horse won first time out, then finished third the next start, and then fell off a cliff and is now up for a claim. Brad Cox horses who were up for a claim can't run, or he's trying to get rid of them. Brad Cox has a stable that's geared towards training Kentucky Derby winners and stakes winners, not claiming horses. So when you see one of his horses up for a claim, that should send up a red flag. Now, is Mitty's Gritty possibly been rehabbed and good enough to win this race? Of course. But the choice of Irad Ortiz on this horse tells me this horse is probably dressed up and they're trying to get rid of. However, given the fact that a lot of these aren't displaying very good form, Mitty's Gritty, we're going to use. And also, we'll go back to Tim's angle. This horse did win a maiden special weight, so probably is a pretty good fit in this race. I'm very reluctant to use this horse, but given this pick five that you're going to see, I think there's a lot of potential prices in this, and I certainly wouldn't want to lose out by overlooking Mitty's Gritty. So we're going to use, but I'm not real thrilled with the possibilities. On the level one and had the last out, but it was not a very good maiden race, and that's the only reason I considered using. But in comparison to the others, I think he would be working a little harder than the others to stay in this race. I think he's a viable candidate, and if we didn't have to cut and keep and limit our budget, on the levels maybe a horse I might think about using. But I had to cut somewhere, and I think he's a horse that is probably a little bit below the top three we use here. I'm going to use the Warden, and here's why. The record has not been the greatest with this horse, but Phil D'Amato is 30% off the claim. He's had plenty of time to work with this horse, and the tab shows it. This is a horse who just threw in a bullet work, looks ready to roll, and is the kind of horse that Phil D'Amato can win with. And when he does ship to Churchill, he is a California trainer, but he usually does pretty well. So at the price of 8-1, I think you need a price in this race. We're going to go with the Warden as our pick to win it. I love the off-the-claim angle as opposed to Mitty Station or Terrapin, where you're not overly certain that they're not trying to get rid of their horses here. So that's basically where we arrived at that decision. I also think that the change of jockey, getting rid of the anchorman Luan Machado, and getting the Warden more forwardly engaged in the race where he has done better is also a good angle. So we like the Warden at the price in this race. Timing Difference is a horse I think you can throw in there as well. He's a late runner. I don't know how much speed we're really going to have. I don't think fielding is very much in this race, and I'm kind of, I thought it was a pretty easy toss. But there'll be some pace to run to, and given the fact you've got a lot of hair on a lot of these, like Risk It and Good Lord, I didn't like Good Lord's last race at all. Had every chance to win it, and could not get it, even with the inside trip on the rail. Bourbon's Fault just doesn't know how to win. Hasn't won in quite some time. Risk It hasn't won in a couple of years. Steve Asmussen claimed this horse back. I think he wishes he hadn't. And he's got him right back up for a tag after one start. So there's a lot of horses in here who don't really know how to win, don't like to. So maybe you throw Timing Difference in there if they all decide that they're human, or they're just not very good, which they pretty much are. Then maybe Timing Difference can clean up at 10-1. But I'd use them underneath more than anything else. So let's move on with the sequence.
The second leg of the pick five is a maiden special weight at 120,000. Eighth race on the card, running a mile on the turf for 2-year-old fillies. And I'll tell you, this is a tough one. You can make quite a few cases for quite a few in here. And you can see it's a full field of 12, and we've got also eligibles, and you've got some familiar faces in terms of Barnes that are in here, Cherie DeVoe, Brendan Walsh, Chad Brown, Brad Cox. Just looking at it, I mean, it's, this is I don't like to spread more than maybe five, but I would actually go, you could probably go 7 or 8 deep in this race. It is a really tough one to figure out. It's going to require, you know, if in sequences we don't have much of a choice, that we sort of have to fish your cut bait. But when you're betting this race individually, really want to look in the paddock and especially hear what Caitlin Free, or now Caitlin Benson, has to say, because this is a tough one. Breaking Hearts looks. I like the work tab for Cherie DeVoe. I'm a little surprised Jose Ortiz isn't aboard. That gives me a little bit of pause. But everything indicates that this horse is probably ready to run, and so I think Breaking Hearts at 8-1, you certainly want to use. No Shame to Her Game. Again, this is the Eddie Keneally, Luis Saez angle, when those two are very potent at Churchill, and so we want to throw her in the mix at 12-1. I think is a pretty good price. It looks like some good indications that this one might be ready too. Dagmar for Brad Cox is very logical. Enough said, right? I mean, it for first-time starter, again, has that consistency on the tab, and there's a lot of things. Being by Mendelssohn, this one should be a good runner right off the bat. So very logical to take Dagmar in there. Petronella as well had a good start. Brendan Walsh is just too hot right now to overlook. Especially when he puts Tyler Gaffalione aboard. We know that how potent a combination they can be. And when Brendan Walsh's barn is going well, it stays hot for a while. So been on a really good heater lately, so Petronella would be the pick. Don't like taking a favorite in a 12-horse field that's as wide open as this. But I think Petronella does check all the boxes, and that's the most important thing. So tepidly, I mean, I would love to have a price in here. I just couldn't get really excited to the point where I could go past Petronella, and if I did, it might have been Dagmara, but it's again, like I say, it's a spread race for sure. Sarah Lunga, Nick Vaccarezza is a smaller barn than what Cherie DeVoe has, and yet he was able to enlist Jose Ortiz, taking him away from Cherie DeVoe. That is, to me, a very interesting call. You couple that with, again, a work tab that looks pretty solid, and Sarah Lunga at 12-1 is exactly the kind of price you want to have in a race like this. So I think you got to throw in Sarah Lunga in the mix. Wanzi Weather, number 8, it just looks very logical. The first two turf starts were pretty good, and then obviously the Alcibiades dirt didn't work out, was a little overmatched, but this one shows enough to tell me that maybe back on the preferred surface with a few races under her belt could be dangerous. So I think Wanzi Weather is one you want to include at 6-1. Want to just make a note about Fatima Blush for Chad Brown, and I was very close to including in my mix. I don't blame you if you want to. Peter Brandt usually doesn't send out anything that can't run, but there's a couple things. First of all, Churchill, this is not a meet that Chad Brown points to. He points to Keeneland, he points to Saratoga, and this is kind of like the rehab meet for bigger trainers, a lot of them. And you've heard me say that. You're going to hear that a lot during this meet at Churchill. But the tab looks fine. Everything looks fine except for a couple things. First of all, Chad Brown had a terrible Breeders' Cup, and his barn is not going well right now. That does not mean that Fatima Blush could not surprise at 8-1, and you're getting don't get Chad Brown at 8-1 too often. But I got to cut somewhere, and I think I've got enough to say that maybe this isn't going to be the day for Fatima Blush right out of the box. So like I said, we're spreading quite a bit here. Going to go six deep, but I think I got enough reasons to keep Fatima Blush out of it. So we'll go with Petronella very tepidly, and I think this is a very wide open race, and in many respects, there is no wrong answer. The third leg of the late pick five is an optional claimer at 125,000 for non-winners of 3 lifetime. Ninth race on the card. Run at 6.5 furlongs for 3-year-olds, and we know these 6.5 furlong races. The extra panel often can really alter the complexion of the race, and this may be an instance of that. Taking a look at, we've got a couple of horses who likely are going to want the lead. And obviously, Speed King, we remember from the Derby Trail. But thing is, Speed King hasn't run since June, I believe it was, in the Maxfield, and did not do terribly well. Has been off for quite some time, and now there's a couple things that bother me. Is number one, the long layoff. Number two, Ron Moquette is 0 for 25 at the meet. Number three is Speed King is getting Lasix for the first time, which tells me that maybe they're trying to find a way to jack this horse back up. And then finally, the work tab. And we gonna harp on this during Churchill Downs at this meet, but this really looks the work tab is erratic. It doesn't have those 7-day works just one after the other that you love to see. And when you start seeing gaps in a work tab, it does tell you that maybe this horse isn't at 100%. The other thing is that since Speed King was a stakes winner at 3, and it was stakes placed running in stakes races, that perhaps this is a tune-up for something later on. Can't be overly certain of that. But I don't think at 4-1 in a race like this, I really want to invest in a horse who's coming off such a long layoff where there really aren't some good signs, with the exception of Tyler Gaffleone's really the only decent sign that this horse might have something. But I just can't invest in Speed King, so I'm going to let go. Jack's Time is my pick to win the race. Now, Jack's Time was a horse, and it was an Iowa bred, so immediately you wonder. But earlier in the year, at Keeneland and in the Iroquois, I think this horse hinted that there was some ability here, just hadn't come to the fore yet. Well, since that time, this horse has been on a roll, and it's been at Prairie Meadows. That's absolutely true. But I like the fact that this horse is now cutting back to a sprint from a route, always a great angle. It is a class test, that is for sure. But I think this horse is the now horse, meaning this is a race that they want to win and they're going for right now. I don't know that you can say that about any of the other horses in here. And since Jack's Time is in such good form and the Brisnet numbers are comparable to some of the better horses in here, granted against at Prairie Meadows, and I grant you all of that, I think Jack's Time is has a pretty good shot here. The extra half panel will probably not be a problem for a horse who's just won a route of ground. So I like that too, and I think Jack's Time has a really good chance to take them all the way here. Gardner is one that is coming off the bench and firing fresh, and I think that's probably the thing I'm liking the most. It's a horse who's been getting progressively better, sitting off the pace. There's a lot of reasons to like Gardner. I believe Jose Ortiz has got them out, if I'm not mistaken. That always helps. And so I think Gardner's pretty logical at 3-1 and a horse to think about. Again, as a now horse, I think this is the kind of race that Gardner runs in. And so I think that certainly elevates it in the discussion here. Now, Politically Correct made a little bit of noise at 2 years old until kind of came reality, woke up from the dream when Jonathan's Way put away in the Iroquois, and and didn't demonstrate a whole lot once the stakes were raised a bit and the class level went up. But this one's been away for quite some time, and certainly we know that a long layup for a 3-year-old can be a good thing, and they can certainly get better and be more viable. They put on more muscle, they grow a little bit. Could be a lot of things. The work tab for politically correct, I think, is pretty good. My question is, thing I wonder about, is whether or not, if politically correct comes back as a horse who's progressed and is a stakes contender, then maybe this is a tune-up for something else. So I have a little bit of a question mark there, and we just don't know about politically correct. It's a bit of an unknown. I think the price is right at 8-1 to find out, but I'm going to kind of take a wait and see approach, dip my toe a little bit, and so we'll just think of politically correct right now for underneath in the exotics. Same thing could be said for Kalahari Dreams. Phil Bauer, again, is not having a good meet. It's unusual. They're 0 for 4. He's 0 for 14 right now with Rigney Racing. Kalahari Dreams, on his best day, would have a very good shot to win this race, I think. I do wonder if they're pointing for something later on in the meet, perhaps a stakes race, a sprint later on. So that has me wondering a little bit. And I just don't. I don't know that I like the work tab a whole lot, and so you couple that with a barn that isn't doing very well right now, and at 5-2, maybe a horse I want to take a break with, or just sort of wait and see as far as a win candidate. Certainly can use underneath. Kalahari Dreams is a horse of quality, probably a very good fit here. There's just a couple of signals that maybe it's not the time to take this one on top, but I would use underneath. I think UW is one that is progressing, and I like the what I saw. I think this one's going to be in good shape coming into this race, and you're getting 8-1. Churchill quite often is a track that favors horses coming from off the pace who rate. And provided, if Jack's time doesn't measure up class-wise, then maybe UW is a horse you think about, given the vulnerability of some of the other more prominent horses. So as a horse coming from off the pace, I think UW makes some pretty good sense. And if you want to, you're looking for a horse to upset the apple cart, and this is the kind of race. And, Churchill this time of year, this is when you find these value plays. So UW may be one to think about, given the fact that politically correct Kalahari Dreams and Speed King maybe not quite up to par with what we might normally expect. So we're going to go with Jack's time in the 9th race. The Dream Supreme is the 4th leg of the Pick 5. It's the 10th race on the card. It's an ungraded stakes at $300,000, run at 6 furlongs for 3-year-olds and up, fillies and mares. You look at this one, and again, form is a big factor, particularly this time of year at this meet. And I hate to keep harping on it, but it really is an issue. And when you look at this race, certainly Our Disaster is one that you want to look at right away. And I think Our Disaster has a class edge over the rest of these. Safi Joseph's doing very well. And we know that he has not been the greatest at Churchill Downs, but he's 3 for 5. So he's loaded for bear for this meet. Certainly, Our Disaster would be the speed of the speed and makes for a very serious win candidate here. But here's the thing that that kind of bothers me a little bit. Now, I think, can Our Disaster win this race? Yeah, perhaps. But you look at the work tab and you see nothing but 3 furlong maintenance works since the last race. And it kind of tells me they've taken the foot off the gas a little bit. So I sort of wonder about the intentions here and what kind of condition Our Disaster is in. So and ordinarily, I would say if the form was a little better, if I saw a little bit more robust work tab, I would probably put our disaster on top, but I can't do it here because the work tab, and secondly, you've got Hilarito, who is to the inside and is in very good form right now. Lost kind of a tough one last time, but is coming in third off the layoff, and I don't know that Hilarito could outrun everybody in this field from wire to wire, but is certainly going to give our disaster all she can handle. But I think either one of them could finish in the money. I just like a horse more off the pace in this type of scenario because I think they're just sort of going to knock heads, the two of them, and more than likely would cancel each other out based upon Hilarito getting a little better, and our disaster may be idling, let's say. So that's the reason for I'm not going to put our disaster on top. But I think either of them you can use within your gimmicks, and I don't know. It left a bad taste in my mouth that our disaster at 9-5 in this race from what I saw. So Jersey Pearl is one that is a horse for the course, 2 for 2 at Churchill Downs. I think the form is pretty good and should be able to sit just behind Hilarito and our disaster. And, provided she's good enough, she's got a real chance here at 10-1. So I think Jersey Pearl is one you certainly want to consider. Marmalade Sky just doesn't win enough for me. I like that this horse always seems to bring it every time, but is a minor award specialist, and that's what we'll ask for here. So I think you can use underneath for the trifecta, perhaps the exacta, but that would be the extent of it. 15-1, you get a pretty square price. Now you got two late runners here that are interesting that we certainly want to consider. I like Minx Palace, and I'll tell you why. Now the Open Mind Stakes last time was a heartbreaker for sure. And it isn't often you see a horse get by Luis Saez in the stretch. That's true. But Positano Sunset is a graded stakes performer, graded stakes winner. And I just think is probably was just a little better than Minx Palace that day. However, I really liked what I saw running style wise. Eddie Keneally and Luis Saez have been very good together. Don't necessarily pay attention to that jockey trainer at 11%. Earlier in the year, they were really clicking. And Eddie Keneally, if he reached out for Luis Saez, that meant he had something. He had a legitimate horse going. So this is probably the case here. I thought Minx Palace displayed some really nice acceleration in the stretch. And just got beat by just a little bit better horse. Well, Positano Sunset's not here, and you've got a scenario with a couple of moderately vulnerable front runners who perhaps are going to be duking it out. I think that's going to set things up for Minx Palace, and at 8-1, I think you've got a generous price in a race that I think maybe you want to find something other than the chalk. Helena's Forte, it's not often you see Phil Bauer have as bad a meet as he's having at Churchill Downs. He's a Kentucky guy, always seems to have his barn ready to roll at the Kentucky meets, but not this year. Rigby Racing, it's been a little bit of an off year for him, and they're 0 for 14 right now. Helena's Forte, I looked at it, and if it wasn't for Rad Ortiz, I probably would toss. It doesn't look like I did like the work tab. I always like to see the work times of the last three getting progressively better with each work. So that is a positive for sure. It may be a harbinger that Helena's Forte is ready to run a decent race. The form has not been good the last couple. And maybe getting back to Churchill, I don't know. Maybe we'll re-energize this horse, but it's hard to put Helena's Forte on top when you consider how the barn is going and how her form has been lately. So Minx Palace at a price in the Dream Supreme. The last leg of the Pick 5 is the River City Stakes. It's a Grade 3, 11th race on the card, running 1 1/8 on the turf for 3-year-olds and up. This is this field is you can see well balanced between. We do have with a slant towards early speed. I think you could say that for sure with the likes of Epic Ride, Wolfie's Dynaghost, Quattrocentro, and then you've got some other horses who can go to the lead or have in the past Encino, Mercante, Corruption. So there's a lot of speed. Certainly would favor a later runner, I think. There's interesting too is that many of the runners are not in the greatest of form right now, and so that's some of them we're going to have to kind of take on reputation because I just don't see where they're building up into a big race. And of course, you got to remember at the end of the year, this is when it's a good time to try to beat some prices or some favorites because it's the end of the year and they may not be in the best of form. And you can see that with quite a few, like Epic Ride, just really doesn't seem to be in the best form and now stretching out to a mile and an eighth with all that speed around him. This is a horse I think certainly it has his moments and is getting better, but I just can't like him in this spot. And Wolfie's Dynaghost I would rather have on synthetic for your early runners, but there's plenty of competition for the lead. So I just think, again, the race shape indicates it's probably going to be set up for later runners. Encino is pretty logical for Brad Cox. It's getting a Rad Ortiz. I think that's a big flag indicator that this horse is ready. Can come from off the pace. Hasn't been of late. It's been more of an early runner, but we have to harken back to earlier form. And this horse is handy and flexible. So I think an off the pace run would certainly put Encino in the mix here. Corruption, I'm not quite as certain about as one that can maybe lay off a little bit. So we'll just have to see. But he's coming into the race in decent enough form. And I think it's a really big positive that Mark Cassie got Jose Ortiz to leave a couple other runners in here to run Corruption. So I expect a decent race. Taking Candy for Cherie DeVoe. It doesn't have Jose Ortiz, which is kind of a red flag, I would say. But this horse is coming in fresh, and I think that's a big advantage in this race. Is like I say, a lot of them are their form is a little lagging. So I think Taking Candy is a pretty good class fit, and I think the fact again that the vulnerability of some of the others maybe elevates Taking Candy a little bit, and you're getting a pretty good price at 8-1. Logano's, full disclosure, never been the biggest fan of this horse. Seems to be an underachiever. Always seems to find trouble and problems, and but has a solid work tab. Is coming to this race in good form, and that may be enough. 9-2, you're getting a square price, and comes from off the pace. So there's a lot of things to like about Logano's. Chasing the Crown will be my pick to win the race. He's a horse for the course at Churchill Downs. He has the right running style for this race. There's going to be plenty of pace to run to, provided he works out a trip. I think he's good to go. 7-2 is a pretty good price for a favorite, and certainly when I see a price that high for the favorite, I'd want to look elsewhere and try to find some value. But I just think everything sets up pretty well for Chasing the Crown, and likely it's going to be shorter come post time. But I think this is a little bit of a spread race, and to me, the defining factor is form. Just more than anything else, there's just a lot of horses not in very good form. A lot of the work tabs, particularly for the first three, Mount Rundle, Quattrocento, and Epic Ride, were not encouraging. And I just think this is one of these weird races where you've got some names we've seen all year. And if I could have found one with decent odds who was in good form to upset the apple cart, this would be the kind of race I'd go for. But I just really couldn't find one, so we settled on Chasing the Crown. But you might want to include a couple others to finish off the pick five to ensure that we still have a fighting chance if we get this far. So let's take a look at our ticket.
Okay, so let's look at the late pick five. Churchill Downs on Saturday, November 8th. This is a tough one. It really is. Those of you who have followed my post know I don't like to spend a whole lot of money on it, like over $100 on a pick five, unless I think there's a reason to. There are a lot of prices in this sequence. If there are a couple in the stakes races that lean maybe a little on the chalky side, but if you can get maybe one or two of these value plays home, then you're looking at a pretty good payout, which may justify it. So, leg one, race seven, we're going to go with 1, 5, and 9. I think that's a very tough race to pinpoint a winner. Leg two, race 8, we're going to spread. It's a maiden, and that's a wide open one. So we're going to use 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, and 11. That is about as many. I usually won't go more than 3 or 4 horses, but that one is just, you've got to spread deep. But you can make a case for almost every horse in the race. Leg 3, race 9, we're going to go with 2 and 4. That's a little more form fitting. Leg 4, the Dream Supreme, race 10, we're going to go with 3 and 9. And we're going to try with a little price with number 9 in race 10. And then race 11, the River City, 4, 6, and 12. And so the stakes races, as they usually are, a little more form fitting, a little easier to arrive at a conclusion. But those first three are pretty tough. And so I think we can justify spreading. So 3 times 6 times 2 times 2 times 3, that's $108 on a 50-cent base. And that, like I said, that is pushing the limit of how far I will go in a pick five sequence. Certainly you can leverage or Dutch your tickets, and I would probably recommend doing so, and that way you can save a couple extra bucks using like the ticket maker app on the Daily Racing Form, for instance. But I will leave that to you. Hope our analysis helps you with your own wagering strategy. I wish you the best of luck as always. And certainly if you do like content like this, please like and subscribe. And thanks to all of you who continue to support us. We had a nice Breeders' Cup. We had quite a few new members. I want to welcome all of you aboard. And we look forward to having you throughout the rest of the year. And for the Kentucky Derby Trail is right around the corner. We're going to be gearing up for that pretty soon. There will be plenty of content for the rest of the year. I love the Churchill Downs Fall Meet. As I mentioned, the Clark Handicap is a great racing day. We've got the Cigar Mile, the Malibu out at Santa Anita. So there's plenty of fun racing to finish out the year, and we'll try to cover all of it for you before we start gearing up for the Run for the Roses in January. So that's it from here. I'll talk to you soon, and until then, be well.